This is the end. The season's done, my friend. And what an end it was. The Sens finished their season 7-2-1 in their last 10 games, and dating back to February 20th, they were the third best team in the division. Take out a sloppy start or extend the season out over a full 82 games, and this team was trending towards being a playoff team. And with the way Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal, and Winnipeg scuffled down the stretch, I think it's pretty fair to say the Sens would finish third in the division. But the season doesn't get to start after the first 15 games. It isn't 82 games long, so the Sens are staring down a second last and possibly even last place finish in the division. But look up, look way up, and you'll find the Sens sitting in 23rd in the league. And at this point, worst case scenario, they finish 24th. Unfortunately, best case scenario, they finish 23rd because they're currently tied with Calgary, and Calgary holds the tiebreaker. For a team that's supposed to be fighting for dead last, that's not bad. Certainly ended up being a much better year than it looked like in the first month, and it ended up being a very successful season development-wise and excitement-wise. So really, it was a good year. But we're not here to do a Sens season wrap-up show. That'll come later. We've still got another week of games to get through, so let's get into it.
Well, that could have gone a lot worse. Thank you. Tie the game, go to overtime, lose. Way to tie up the stick in front. Not.
Oh boy. And just like that, 6-5, the Sens win!
That was just bad. And here we go. They got their dub. Not anymore. They got a guy with the best name in sports. A guy with the name Brady.
The week got off to an excellent start for the Sens, as Connor Brown and Tim Stützle scored first period goals to give the Sens a 2-0 lead against the Jets. Mason Appleton made it 2-1 in the second, but Stützle added two more in the third, sandwiched between a Mark Scheifele goal to give the Sens a 4-2 win. Tim Stützle scores his first NHL hat-trick, Shane Pinto picks up his first career multi-point game, and the line of Connor Brown, Tim Stützle, and Shane Pinto dominated this game, scoring 4 times and adding 4 assists. That's 8 points from 2 rookies and a versatile veteran. That's what I call a dominating night. Call myself out a little bit here. For a guy that can't shoot the puck very well, that's a pretty impressive rookie year hat trick. I was really impressed with this line over the course of this hockey game. They dominated all over the ice and were excellent possession-wise. I thought this line was exactly the kind of line a team needs to dominate a hockey game. This line scored every goal for the Sens in this game and were the major reason why they won the game. These young Sens players are really starting to grow on a Sens fan base that over the last few years have just been exhausted from player exits and ownership meltdowns and general manager incompetence at times, just giving away players for nothing. But this young team is starting to grow on the fan base, and that was never more evident than Monday night after the Sens got back from their 2-game road trip, when the Sens fans showed up in Stützle's backyard and littered it with hats to celebrate this hat trick. I'm sure you've all seen the video by now, and if you haven't, it's all over social media. But basically, Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris, and Tim Stützle's neighbor and his kids set up a little hat celebration with the neighborhood kids. They all showed up, got Stützle to come out, and they all threw at least 5 hats over the fence to at least give Stützle a little celebration and say, hey, we love to see your hat trick, and all the fans couldn't throw the hats at the game, we can do it now. You see all these stories of all these Sens fans doing all these amazing things for the players, yet Sens fans have one of the worst reputations in the league as being fans because, oh, you can't sell out a building that nobody can get to. Or, oh, you can't sell out a building for an owner that everybody hates. But even that's going away. I said this a number of times. Eugene Melnyk didn't necessarily need to sell the team. He just needed to take a back seat and let the team be the team. He's starting to do that, and things are starting to get a lot better. I can tell you, this was by far the best season the Sens have had public relations-wise in years. In fact, it's probably been years and years and years. But things got a lot better this year. I haven't been this excited to be a Sens fan since I was probably 10 years old and everything about hockey excited me. But credit this fan base for this act and credit Stützle for the hat trick because this was a great act, a great night, and a lot of fun. And speaking of a lot of fun, the Sens weren't having a lot of fun the next night when they visited the Flames. Johnny Gaudreau snuck behind the Sens D and scored a beautiful breakaway goal while falling down to give the Flames a 1-0 first period lead. Michael Backlund then added to that lead 17 seconds into the second period. Matthew Tkachuk and Michael Stone extended that lead to 4-0 just past the period's midway mark. Josh Norris scored about a minute later to cut it 4-1, but Dylan Dubé and Mark Giordano scored third period goals to give the Flames a dominating 6-1 win. The Sens were never in this game from puck drop. Obviously, the second night of a back-to-back against a team desperate to pick up as many points as they could to keep themselves in a playoff race was just a terrible combination, and it bit the Sens terribly in this hockey game. Despite the fact the Sens were really never in this hockey game and were chasing it around the whole time, I thought there was a key play in the first period that if you change that, you might change the outcome of this hockey game. But before we address this goal, I want to take you back to March 22nd for a while. The Sens are ahead 1-0 in this hockey game. They have been in complete control. Philip Gustafsson is playing unbelievable hockey, and the Sens lead late in the third period. And what happens in this hockey game with just over 5 minutes left? Johnny Gaudreau sneaks behind the defense, gets a breakaway goal, wrecks Philip Gustafsson's shutout, and ties this game at 1. Chris Tierney ultimately broke the tie with over 2.5 minutes left to give the Sens the win in that hockey game anyway. But let's fast forward to Sunday night. The Sens aren't playing great hockey, but they're hanging around. All of a sudden though, guess what happens? Again! Johnny Gaudreau sneaks behind the defense, beats Anton Forsberg on a breakaway, and the Sens never get the game close again. Obviously, the really easy goal to point to would be the Michael Backlund goal at the start of the second period. 17 seconds into the second period, when you're down a goal and things aren't going great. That was the death knell. But at the end of the day for me, you had to know that Gaudreau play was coming because they'd done it to you before. You let that goal go in, and the game was effectively over after that. This right here might be a good reason why I will never be a very good hockey coach. The same thing keeps happening, which is the definition of insanity, by the way. But the same thing keeps happening, and they never correct it. How many times can I tell you, watch Gaudreau, don't let him get behind you? How many times can he get behind you and score goals before I'm just going to absolutely lose my mind? Unfortunately, that's what happened on this play. It dug the Sens an early hole, and they were never able to climb out of it. And speaking of an early hole, that brings me to the final game of the week. And with nothing left to play for this season, I thought the Sens had a decent effort. Nikita Zaitsev opened the scoring against his former team with his second consecutive goal from the exact same spot on the ice, this time bouncing one in off Ben Hutton to give the Sens a 1-0 first period lead. Jake Muzzin would tie the score with a second period power play goal, but a shorthanded goal from Connor Brown and an even strength goal from Parker Kelly making his NHL debut and his first NHL goal gave the Sens a 3-1 lead. Some defensive breakdowns then hurt the Sens as they left John Tavares wide open in front late in the second period. He makes no mistake to cut it to 3-2. They then fall asleep late in the third, leave Austin Matthews wide open. He scores to make it 3-3, but 9 seconds into overtime, Brady Tkachuk forces a Mitch Marner turnover, feeds Josh Norris on a 2-on-1. He sneaks one by a recently returning Frederik Andersen to give the Sens a 4-3 win and cap off a solid end of the season. Considering this was the Sens' final hockey game for 4 months, and they've been rolling right along, I actually wasn't overly impressed with their effort in this hockey game. I thought Kachuk kind of came in and out of the game. Not that he was horrible, but I didn't think he quite emptied the tank the way I expected. I could say the same about Norris. Batherson was almost a no-show. Stützle struggled. I thought the only guys that really, truly emptied the tank were Connor Brown. I liked Nikita Zaitsev's game. I thought Eric Brandstrom was solid. But there weren't enough guys that just emptied it for me. Not that the Sens were bad by any stretch. I thought they were good in this game. But the Leafs had more to play for. The Sens didn't. And the Sens weren't that much better than a Leafs team that really wasn't all that good. I just thought there was more room for some more tank emptying in this hockey game. We just didn't seem to get. Regardless, the Sens ended the season the exact same way they ended it, by beating the Leafs. So you can't hate it that much. And of course, now we get 4 months off. But before we start to look ahead, we've got one final weekly 3 stars of the season. Interestingly enough, I didn't think it was an awful week from the Sens this week. But I found it kind of difficult to find guys that actually stood out. The Calgary game aside, obviously, because nobody stood out in that hockey game. But this wasn't an open and shut case for who the 3 stars were by any stretch. And of course, as always, let's kick things off with star number 3. This guy went 2-0 this week, appeared in all 3 games, and was steady enough in all 3 games. So for that reason, this week's 3rd star is Ottawa Senators goaltender Filip Gustavsson. Like I said, Gustavsson went a perfect 2-0 this week, was excellent in both starts, and was a major reason why the Sens were able to pick up wins in each of his starts. He also came in against the Flames after Anton Forsberg had given up 4 goals and was at least able to stop the bleeding a little bit, giving the Sens a little bit of opportunity to come back. Not that they were able to take it, but Gustavsson ended up finishing the week with 67 of a possible 75 saves, was real strong, and for that reason, he is this week's 3rd star. And that brings me to star number 2. This guy hasn't been a major star for the Sens, but boy oh boy has he been really good since Chabot went down. He was excellent again this week, and for that reason, this week's 2nd star is Ottawa Senators defenseman Nikita Zaitsev. Just look at Zaitsev's numbers from the Leafs game alone. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, +1, 2 shots on goal, 4 block shots. He played the 2nd most minutes on the team at 24.5 minutes. And like I said, this guy has been really impressive since Chabot went down. I think it's been 6 games since Chabot went down, and Zaitsev has played the 2nd most minutes on the Sens D-Corps 5 times. Zaitsev played nearly 6 minutes of penalty kill in that game against the Leafs alone, limiting the Leafs to just 1 goal on 5 opportunities, and was a major reason why this game managed to get to overtime. Nikita Zaitsev's partner Victor Mete was last week's 2nd star. Mete is the only guy in the 6-game span to play more minutes than Zaitsev has. This week, Zaitsev gets his due, as he's been excellent since Chabot went down, had a real strong week, and for that reason, Nikita Zaitsev is this week's 2nd star. And that brings me to star number 1. I think we all know who it is, so without further ado, this week's 1st star is Ottawa Senators forward Connor Brown. 'Cause he's bad, bad, Connor Brown, baddest man in the whole downtown, badder than a whole King Kong, meaner than a junkyard dog. Like pretty much the entire team, I thought Connor Brown wasn't terrific against Calgary, but boy oh boy did he have unbelievable games against Winnipeg and Toronto. Like I mentioned, that line of Brown, Pinto, and Stützle was by far the best trio of players on the ice for either team against Winnipeg. And then against Toronto, Connor Brown, hands down, no questions asked, was the best player on the ice for either team. Again, listen to this stat line from the Leafs game alone. 1 goal, 1 block shot, 1 takeaway, 6 shots, and 5.5 minutes of penalty kill time against a Leafs team that went 1 for 5. Connor Brown played 5.5 minutes of shorthanded time. He had on his own as many shorthanded goals as the Leafs had power play goals, and had as many shots on the penalty kill as the Sens power play had on the power play. Add in the Jets game where he had a goal, 2 assists, 3 points, was a +3 with 2 shots on goal, and 2.5 minutes of penalty kill time against a Jets penalty kill that went 0-2. Yeah, you can add all that up and easily see how this week's number 1 star is Ottawa Senators forward Connor Brown. So for a quick recap, this week's 3 stars, Philip Gustafsson is star number 3, Nikita Zaitsev is star number 2, and Connor Brown is star number 1. And that brings me to this week's most disappointing player. This guy has been the poster boy for this award all season long, and this week is no different. So this week's most disappointing player is Ottawa Senators forward Evgeny Dadonov. Evgeny Dadonov was brought in the offseason as a major free agent acquisition. And to be brutally honest, it was a major flop. Dadonov was brought in to help a Sens power play that over the last few years has struggled. Well, here we are at the end of the year. Dadonov finished this season with 0 power play goals. In fact, he had a power play assist in the 3rd game of the season, a Sens 4-3 overtime loss to the Jets, and never scored on the power play again after that. And if that wasn't bad enough, wait till you hear how he wrapped up his final 3 games of the season. 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points, -2, 0 shots, 0 block shots, 0 takeaways, 4 hits, 1 giveaway. Oh, and he only played about 14.5 minutes a night, which was pretty far down on the Sens forward list. Dadonov did miss a game or 2 down the stretch, so maybe he's just banged up a little bit. But he didn't have a very good week, and so this week's most disappointing player is Ottawa Senators forward Evgeny Dadonov. And that brings me to what's ahead for the Sens. All joking aside, hockey's over till at least September. The NHL announced at a general managers meeting in late April that they're targeting about a September 22nd training camp open date with a mid-October NHL regular season start date. I believe it was the 12th. How the vaccine program goes, how the next few waves go over the next few months, and how the Canadian government reacts to each of those things will be interesting to see and will have a major impact on whether that October 12th start date is realistic. In the meantime, let's operate under that assumption and assume we'll see you in October. So the Sens young core now has about 4 months to get ready for next season. They need to get healthy, they need to get bigger, they need to get faster, and they need to get stronger. Whether the Sens have any shot at a playoff spot next season won't be decided by what they do on the ice next season. It's going to be decided by what they do on the ice and in the gym this summer. Let's see it, and let's see this team be an even bigger wagon come September. And speaking of September, where does that leave me and this channel between now and September? Well, I can't promise I'll keep it running weekly, but I do plan on keeping it running as weekly as possible over the course of the summertime. I plan over the next few days, if I have some time, of putting together a first round playoff prediction for each of the series in hand. Of course, I still have to do a season review where I wrap up everything that happened this season, kind of talk about the season as a whole. I'll do a 3 stars of the year kind of a thing. I'll do a most disappointing player of the year kind of thing. And we'll just have a little bit of a wrap-up show. Of course, late in the summer or early in September, I'll have to do some kind of a prediction kind of a video where I talk about what I expect the season to look like for the Sens. There'll also be a draft video. We'll have free agency. I'm sure the Sens are going to be making some trades, so we'll have lots to talk about this summer. But of course, There's a lot more weeks than there are things to talk about. So if you've got any ideas for things you want me to talk about, like, hey, maybe a top 5 list of Sens players all time, maybe top 5 goalies list all time, who knows? I'm open to any suggestions you might have. So put them in the comments below, and I'll keep my eyes open for them over the course of the summer. Of course, that's it for this video. Hit like if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share it with anybody you know, and let me know down below. What did you think of the Sens' end of this season? Did you think it was as impressive as I did? Let me know, and we'll see you hopefully by midweek for an NHL playoff preview special.